Thank you. Thank you. I'm very excited to present here today, to be here and to be here in person. You know, these days when almost everything is remote, meeting in person feels like a luxury. And today we'll be talking about system thinking and how it can help you to make the right impact and not the wrong one in your companies. Just a couple of words about me. For the last 6 years, I'm working as a Scrum Master and an Agile coach, mostly in large corporations. Now I'm working in company access SOFTEK USA. And though there were many interesting things during all those years, there's one thing that I'm the most proud of. It is the educational program for the senior management. And one of the big parts of it was systems thinking. As I'm sure that every senior manager, and by the way, every change agent should understand systems thinking. And I think I can tell why. So, why systems thinking? Let's look at a metaphor. When your leg is aching, you take a pill into your mouth. But it's strange. Your mouth is not aching. Why? Why not put it somewhere into your leg? You put it into your mouth because you know how the system works. Or maybe you don't, but your doctor does. And if you know how the system works, that helps you make the right impact in the right place. Not in your leg. I want to present you several cases from my experience and try to make some conclusions from them. Case number 1, push for speed. Imagine that you are a manager and you have many things for the team to do. Many things. But the team cannot do it in the time when you need it. The speed of the team is not enough. And you think, well, if I push them just a little, make a little pressure, maybe they would try a little harder and maybe they would be able to produce a little more. I want to ask you, what do you think? What would happen? I will give you 3 choices. 1, the team will speed up. 2, the team will slow down. And 3, the team will first speed up and then slow down. Please choose. I just wanted to ask, but you already did it. Thank you. Most of you are choosing 3. The team will speed up and then slow down. Let's look at the case. I once worked with a team and the PO took too many commitments and they were fixed date commitments. So they had to achieve all of them at a fixed date. And he knew that the team cannot do it with the current speed, and also the team also knew that. So he decided to make a little pressure. But he didn't yell at them, he didn't threaten them, he just explained them why it's really necessary to do everything in time. You know, sometimes push is not what you think. So, let's look at 3 variables here. The speed of the team, that is just the number of features the team produces in some period of time. Second is pressure, psychological pressure. And the last one is how the team focuses of the number of features. Let's see how they are connected. So in that story, the PO needed more speed, so he decided to increase pressure. And if he increased pressure, of course, the focus of the number of features of the team also increased. Great. While being very focused on number of features, they really managed to do more, so their speed increased. And as the speed increased, there is an inverse arrow that there was no more need to increase pressure more. Great. Here you can see a cycle, and it's a balancing cycle. It means that if you put a pressure, the speed raises, and there is no more need to put more pressure. Isn't it great? And the PO was very excited, he was happy, but that's not the whole picture. Let's zoom out. Let's see what else is involved. I've cleaned up a little so that new arrows wouldn't mix with the old ones. Let's see what other variables are here. While the team focused on number of features, maybe you already know what else happened, what side effect they had. Of course, the quality suffered. But, and it is very crucial that it was delayed. They didn't know that their quality is suffering from the first day. As their quality suffered, they began to receive tons of defects from their users because the quality was low. And they had to stay overtime to work on weekends just to fix those defects or find some workarounds. And now, what became with their speed? It decreased because they were mainly focused on defects, not on new features. They even had to switch off one of the main features they created because of the low quality. The users couldn't use that. And as the speed decreased and time was elapsing, you would imagine what was with pressure. The pressure increased even more. Now you again see a cycle, but it's no more a balancing cycle. It's a reinforcing cycle, also called a snowball cycle, because you put a pressure, the speed decreases, and you have to put more pressure, and the speed decreases again. And that's not everything. There are two more interesting variables here. As the quality decreased, the effort for every new feature increased, because the worse the code, the more difficult it is to create something new in it. And of course, it again decreased their speed. So after this story, after that fixed date, they had to rewrite everything from scratch, not to have so difficult and slow creation of new features. And again, it's a reinforcing cycle. Again, it decreases speed and makes pressure even more. So, generally, what do we see here? You put some impact, you make some impact at some place in the system, and at the first time, you get what you want. But eventually, you get just the opposite. It's one of the system archetypes called fixes that backfire. And unfortunately, it's seen very often in modern corporations. So, what could be the conclusion? Aside of that, making pressure into the team is not always a good idea. Beware of delayed effects, because delayed effects are hidden, and that's why are dangerous. Let's look at the second case. I called it vendor the bad guy. Let's look at the team's board. Looks nice. Analysis, development, testing, and everything could be done in 2 weeks. Isn't it good? And also, we could think, if we want to make some continuous improvement, as we like, we may think that maybe we should find something to improve it from 2 weeks to 1 week or 1.5 weeks. Wouldn't be great? Let's postpone this for the later and look at the bigger picture. I've seen many teams that try to improve their work, not looking at the bigger picture, and that was the case. They had a vendor that did most of the job, It was their contractor. And it took as much as 6 months to get literally anything from them. And every time they got something from that vendor, it was of a very low quality. Then they had to take their own component, which they made in 2 weeks, and integrate everything. But before integration, they had to do acceptance testing, fix bugs, do acceptance testing again fix bugs, because the quality was very low. And if I ask now, would it be beneficial to reduce 2 weeks to 1.5 weeks? Of course, no, because it wouldn't do anything good for the whole system. And in some cases, not in this particular, if we zoom out even more, we could see that that could be not the biggest problem. Sometimes we have processes before the team even knows about the task. Marketing, decision-making, budgeting, something else that could take years. And if we look at that picture, maybe those 6 months is not that bad. But let's return here. What would you recommend to this team? Number one, make them try harder somehow. Make some pressure, threaten, make more control, something like that. Number two, help them test. So take some work from them that they are not doing well and do it yourself. And number three, just find them for every defect so that they give you only good and tested software so that you wouldn't spend much of your time testing. What do you think? What would you recommend to this team? Number two, I see. Number two. Let's see. First of all, from all those three, there are two logical and fair choices. And they are number one, make them try harder. You know, it's their problem, they should solve it. And number three, find them for every defect, because you have to spend much of your time doing their job, let them doing it. But let's see what's happening if you choose it. If you make them to try harder, we already know what's happening from case one. The team would receive lower quality and lower speed. That's not at all what they wanted. Actually, that's what they were actually doing before asking me. And number three, to find them for every defect. Yes, it's the way to get better quality, of course. But they would wait almost forever for it. So, the only illogical and unfair choice, anyway, why take someone else's job, which you paid for already, and do it yourself? Again, sounds strange. But if we look, what are the consequences? They would increase the quality and increase the speed. And at the same time, of course, making some effort here would make the team slower in their own job. But that doesn't matter really, because it's not comparable. Again, if to make a conclusion, I would say optimize the whole. You know, very often when you need something to be done fast, someone should do someone else's job. And maybe next day, vice versa. I often see it in teams when one team member says, I don't want to help another team member in his professional field because I would be inefficient there. But it's okay. He should be inefficient sometimes for the whole team to be efficient. And if we look at the words of Edward Deming, if the various components of an organization are all optimized, the organization will not be. If the whole is optimized, the components will not be. We can stress it even more, because you should de-optimize parts of your system sometimes to optimize the whole. Now let's proceed to the third case, the watermelon effect. Every manager needs to know how his teams are doing. And if it is a manager of many teams, he cannot just come and talk to every team and ask, guys, how are you doing? He needs data. I worked for a company of about 3,000 teams, and many managers of all levels needed data of how the teams are doing. And there is a simple and logical solution for it. Dashboards. Just dashboards taking data from systems, from Jira, from other systems. Simple traffic light style dashboard. Managers like it, like those style very much. It's because it's easy to understand. Green or red. And again, I want to ask you, imagine that you are a manager of 50 teams. You look at the dashboard and you see that some teams are green and some teams have red indicators. What would you do with it? One, tell them to fix it. You know, it's a problem there, you should fix it. Number two, organize a discussion. What's the cause? What should we do? Number three, to give not a negative incentive but a positive one, to establish a competition, to give something to the team that's the best with number of green indicators. What do you think? I see twos and threes. Yeah, thank you. As I said, it was a very large organization. And we could see managers of all kinds doing all the things. One of them told the teams to fix the problem. Some of them even punished the teams somehow. Some of them asked PO to find out and tell what's the problem. And even there was a competition established, which was actually the worst decision of all, I should say. And we can see, we will see now why. Let's look at it again from the bigger picture and from the team's perspective. Most of the teams never wanted to show their problems to the management. But why? What they would expect if the management sees their problems. At most, they would be punished. At worst, at best, they would have a tough conversation with an additional task for them to solve the problem. Why? Why showing? So what would they do? What they did? They just cheated with the data. It's simple. It's Jira. You can change the field in Jira. You can close one task and create another. You can link them, unlink them, and so on. More of that. Many teams have a dedicated member to look at the dashboards regularly and to fix the data. More of that. Many middle managers knew about that and asked team to do that because they didn't want to show the problems to the higher management. What's the result? The company created an instrument to hide problems. And not talking about the effort to create it, it was not very big, but it had a very high cost for the company to maintain it, to cheat with the data. Of course, no one ever measured that effort. I suppose that no less than 10% of overall team performance was spent on that. Very much. So that's called the watermelon effect. When you see everything green from the outside, but it is really red inside. What conclusion, what takeaway could we have from all that? Not that dashboards are bad always, of course. But we should remember that feedback mechanisms are especially fragile. And we should look after them very well. And also, at the same time, they are very important. There are many managers working in organizations where the feedback mechanisms are broken and they are living in imaginary worlds with unicorns and making everyday decisions as if those unicorns were real. That's the problem of feedback mechanisms. So, to sum it all up, beware of delayed effects because they hide. Optimize the whole, don't optimize parts and even de-optimize them if necessary. And pay special attention to feedback mechanisms as they tend to be broken very often. And the fourth thing, zoom out. Try to see the bigger picture. It's almost everything I want to tell you today. Just several materials. The Art of Systems Thinking, a good book on that topic. And also it contains a very interesting chapter on systems archetypes. The second one is The Goal. It's a classic, an amazing book. I really think that every manager and every change agent should read it. It really helps very much. And not to stop on reading, also playing the game of trust. I like it very much because it's based on game theory. And if you play it, you will not only get insights into how systems work, but also insights in the nature of trust. Also very interesting. You can play alone and have about half an hour with it, or you can gather as a group with discussions, and of course that would take longer. That's all. Thank you very much. Create good systems and make an impact.